Welcome to this MOZA Racing MFY Yoke review. Today we're taking a look at one of the most immersive airline flight simulation setups currently available. And honestly, the first thing you notice with the MFY Yoke is the flight controls. Everything feels solid, smooth, and premium right away. The handles feel comfortable during long flights, the buttons have a satisfying click, and the overall design feels heavily inspired by real commercial airliners. But where the MFY really impressed me was during takeoff. The second you line up on the runway and start adding thrust, the experience instantly feels more dynamic. You can feel the aircraft building speed, the controls gradually becoming lighter with airflow, and subtle runway vibrations through the yoke. Then during rotation, everything feels incredibly smooth and natural. You slowly pull back on the yoke, the nose starts lifting, and instead of feeling artificial resistance, the movement feels believable and fluid. Especially in larger airliners, that added feedback makes a massive difference. The aircraft feels heavier, more connected to the ground, and way more realistic overall. Landing also becomes much more precise because you're constantly feeling what the aircraft is doing through the controls. Crosswind corrections feel smoother, flare feels easier to judge, and small adjustments become much more natural. But the moment where this yoke truly starts feeling like a real airline setup is when autopilot gets involved. Because unlike most standard yokes, the MFY physically moves together with the aircraft. The second autopilot starts making corrections, the yoke reacts automatically. When the aircraft banks into a turn, the yoke turns with it. When the aircraft trims during climb or cruise, you can physically feel those small adjustments happening in real time. And honestly, that detail alone adds a huge amount of realism, because that's exactly how it works in real commercial aircraft. Normally in home simulators, autopilot feels completely disconnected from the controls. You activate it, and physically nothing changes. But with the MFY, everything suddenly feels connected. The aircraft feels active, the cockpit feels alive, and the simulator starts feeling much closer to real aviation. You begin noticing trim behavior more naturally, and even small autopilot corrections become visible directly through the yoke itself. It sounds like a small feature, but during longer flights, it completely changes the immersion. The software side is also really strong. You can create different aircraft profiles, adjust resistance strength, tweak force feedback settings, and completely customize how the aircraft feels. So if you switch from a small Cessna to a heavy Boeing 737, the controls can actually feel different. You've got quick access to things like the landing gear, nav lights, beacon lights, and multiple extra programmable buttons for different aircraft functions. And honestly, having those controls directly on the yoke makes the entire experience feel much more immersive and practical during flight. But where the realism really becomes noticeable again is during the approach and ILS setup. The moment you intercept the localizer and begin lining up with the runway, the yoke constantly gives small corrections and subtle feedback through your hands. You can actually feel the aircraft adjusting itself during the approach. As the autopilot follows the glide slope, the MFY naturally moves together with the aircraft, making the entire descent feel far more realistic compared to a normal static yoke. And during final approach, every small movement suddenly matters. Tiny corrections feel smoother, the aircraft feels more stable, and you feel way more connected to what the airplane is doing. Especially during windy conditions or slight turbulence, the force feedback adds a huge amount of immersion. You're no longer just watching the aircraft approach the runway on your monitor. You're physically feeling the approach happen through the controls themselves. And honestly, that's one of the coolest things about flying with the MOZA MFY Yoke. It makes procedures like ILS approaches feel much closer to a real airline experience. Another thing that really improves the realism is using the right force feedback preset. And one preset I can definitely recommend is the preset made by real airline pilot, Tony. The settings feel incredibly balanced and realistic, especially during approaches, autopilot corrections, and trim behavior. You can really notice how smooth and natural the aircraft feels with his setup. The link to Tony's preset is in the video description, and the installation process is super easy. Just open the MOZA app, import the preset, and you're basically ready to fly. Alright, we're fully established on the ILS now. Let's land this thing.
Landing checklist to flaps. Start switches.
Continuous.
Recall.
Check.
Speed brake.
Out. Inline.
Landing gear.
Down. 3 green.
Auto brake.
Green. Set. That's 30.
1,000.
Flaps 30.
Complete the checklist.
Flaps.
30. Inline.
Landing lines.
Approaching runway 21.
Complete the checklist.
Landing lines.
On.
Landing checklist completed.
Manual flight.
Plus 100. Minimums. $50, $40, $30, $20, $10.
Speed brake up. Reverse normal. 4-7%.
Manual braking.
Auto brake disarmed. 100 knots.
Check.
80 knots.
Check.
60 knots.
Check.
Ryanair 3023, contact ground on 121.903.
It's easy to understand why so many flight simmers are switching to force feedback. The immersion difference is massive, from taxiing to takeoff to autopilot, and even during approach, everything simply feels more alive and connected. It stops feeling like you're just playing a simulator and starts feeling much closer to operating a real airliner. If you want to experience that level of realism yourself, go to MOZA Racing. The link is in the video description, so make sure to check it out and get your own yoke. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and stay tuned, because there's a lot more new content coming soon.